Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're embarking on an exploration of a topic that's both fascinating and of great significance. Why is African American DNA so unique? This isn't merely about tracing ancestry or heritage. It's about delving into the incredible diversity, resilience, and stories embedded within our genes. DNA isn't just a biological blueprint. It's a living chronicle of history, migration, survival, and transformation. When we discuss African American DNA, we're uncovering one of the most intricate and remarkable genetic narratives on the planet. Here's the essence. African American DNA owes its uniqueness to its roots in Africa, the most genetically diverse continent on Earth. But that's just the starting point. The transatlantic slave trade, centuries of migration, and the intermingling of African, European, and even Native American ancestries have all played crucial roles in shaping what we observe today. It's a story of survival and adaptation inscribed in the genetic code of millions of African Americans. Why does this matter? For starters, understanding this diversity enables researchers to make significant breakthroughs in the field of medicine, identify genetic markers, and address health disparities. But it's also deeply intertwined with identity. Knowing where we come from helps us better understand who we are in the present. In this video, we'll explore everything from the genetic richness of Africa to how history has molded African American DNA. We'll examine the scientific, cultural, and historical factors that render this topic so captivating. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll view DNA in an entirely new light. So, fasten your seatbelts and get ready to explore one of the most incredible stories ever told, the story of African American DNA. And hey, before we dive in, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell. We've got a plethora of exciting content lined up for you, and you surely won't want to miss out. To grasp the uniqueness of African American DNA, we must start at its origin, Africa. Often referred to as the cradle of humanity, Africa is where modern humans first emerged over 200,000 years ago. What makes Africa truly extraordinary is not just its status as the birthplace of humanity, but also its position as the most genetically diverse continent on the planet. Consider this. If you were to analyze the DNA of two individuals from different regions of Africa, you might find more genetic differences between them than between a European and an Asian. That's just how extensive Africa's genetic diversity is. This diversity is the result of hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, environmental adaptations, and cultural practices. For African Americans, the majority of their ancestral roots can be traced back to West and Central Africa, regions home to a rich tapestry of ethnic groups, languages, and genetic traits. From the Yoruba and Igbo in Nigeria to the Akan in Ghana, these groups have contributed to the rich genetic pool that African Americans inherit today. However, African American DNA isn't solely about African ancestry. It's a blend, a mosaic that also incorporates European and, in some instances, Native American genes. This blending occurred over centuries, beginning during the transatlantic slave trade, when Africans were forcibly transported to the Americas. The result is a unique genetic profile that reflects both the diversity of Africa and the complexities of American history. Why is this diversity significant? For one, it aids scientists in understanding human evolution. The genetic markers found in African American DNA often hold clues about how humans adapted to various environments, resisted diseases, and thrived under challenging circumstances. For example, traits such as resistance to malaria or adaptations to tropical climates are still present in African populations. But it's not just about science, it's about identity as well. Understanding this diversity allows African Americans to connect with their heritage and appreciate the incredible richness of their ancestry. It serves as a reminder that DNA isn't just about biology. It's about history, culture, and resilience. No discussion of African American DNA would be complete without addressing the transatlantic slave trade. This dark chapter in history has profoundly influenced African American genetics, leaving a legacy that is still evident today. Between the 16th and 19th centuries, millions of Africans were forcibly removed from their homelands and brought to the Americas. The journey known as the Middle Passage was incredibly brutal. Many did not survive, and those who did often faced unimaginable hardships. But this wasn't just a human tragedy. It also created what scientists term a genetic bottleneck. Let me explain. A genetic bottleneck occurs when a large population is reduced to a smaller group, thereby limiting genetic diversity. Picture pouring a jar of marbles through a small funnel. Only a fraction makes it through, while the rest is lost. That's precisely what happened during the transatlantic slave trade. The genetic diversity of millions of Africans was filtered through the traumatic experience of slavery, leaving behind a smaller gene pool that would shape future generations. But even within this tragedy, there lies a story of resilience. Enslaved Africans brought with them not only their genes, but also their cultures, languages, and traditions. Over time, these elements blended with those of European colonizers and Native Americans, giving rise to a unique genetic and cultural identity. For example, DNA testing often reveals that African Americans have approximately 70 to 80% African ancestry, with the remaining percentage originating from European and Native American sources. This admixture wasn't always consensual. Enslavement frequently involved exploitation and violence, yet it left a lasting mark on African American DNA. Today, this complex ancestry is a source of both scientific interest and personal discovery. Genetic testing companies like 23andMe or Ancestry DNA often highlight the diverse roots of African Americans, tracing connections to specific regions in Africa and beyond. For many, this process is a means of reclaiming a history that was forcibly taken away. The transatlantic slave trade was a tragedy of unfathomable proportions, but the genetic legacy it left behind is a testament to human resilience. It serves as a reminder that even in the face of oppression, the human spirit and the human genome can endure. African American DNA isn't just unique because of its African roots or historical mixing. It's also incredibly diverse within the population itself. This diversity reflects centuries of movement, adaptation, and intermixing, creating a genetic profile unlike any other. Let's break it down. African Americans don't trace their lineage to a single part of Africa. Instead, their ancestry spans multiple regions, primarily West and Central Africa. Groups such as the Yoruba in Nigeria, the Akan in Ghana, and the Congo peoples in Angola have all contributed to the genetic makeup of African Americans. Each of these groups has its own distinct genetic markers, reflecting the incredible diversity of Africa itself. When enslaved Africans were brought to the Americas, they carried this diversity with them. But the story doesn't end there. Over the centuries, African Americans migrated across the United States, intermixing with other populations and among themselves. The Great Migration, for instance, saw millions of African Americans leave the rural South for cities in the North and Midwest. During the 20th century, these migrations brought people from different regions and backgrounds together, creating a melting pot of genetic variation. Then there's the aspect of admixture. Many African Americans have European ancestry, which typically accounts for about 20% of their genetic makeup, though this can vary significantly from person to person. This European admixture usually dates back to the colonial and antebellum periods, when power dynamics often led to non-consensual relationships. In some cases, there's also evidence of Native American ancestry, adding another layer of complexity to African American genetics. Why does this matter? For one, it challenges the notion that race is a straightforward biological concept. The genetic diversity within the African American population is so vast that it defies simple categorization. Scientists often emphasize that while race is a social construct, genetic variation is real, and African American DNA highlights just how complex and interconnected humans are. This diversity also has practical implications for health. For example, African Americans have made significant contributions to groundbreaking genetic research, helping scientists identify markers for conditions such as sickle cell anemia, hypertension, and diabetes. But the diversity within this population also means that a one-size-fits-all approach to medicine simply won't work. Personalized healthcare becomes essential when dealing with such a rich and varied genetic background. In short, African American DNA isn't just a blend of African, European, and Native American genes. It's a dynamic living testament to the resilience and adaptability of a people. One of the most fascinating aspects of African American DNA is how it reflects the survival strategies of our ancestors. Over millennia, humans adapted to their environments, and those adaptations are encoded in our genes. For African-descended populations, some of these genetic traits were crucial for surviving the harsh conditions of tropical Africa, and they still persist in African American DNA today. Let's begin with one of the most well-known examples, the sickle cell gene. This gene evolved as a defense mechanism against malaria, a disease that was and remains common in sub-Saharan Africa. Individuals who inherit one copy of the sickle cell gene are more resistant to malaria, giving them a survival advantage in regions where the disease is widespread. However, inheriting two copies of the gene leads to sickle cell anemia, a painful and often debilitating condition. This is a prime illustration of how a genetic trait that evolved for survival can have both benefits and risks. But sickle cell isn't the only genetic marker that tells a story of survival. For instance, certain genes in African-descended populations are associated with faster responses to infections, which may have evolved in response to the high disease burden in tropical environments. These adaptations were essential for survival in Africa, but can present challenges in different environments. Take hypertension, for example. African Americans are more prone to suffering from high blood pressure than other groups. While lifestyle factors such as diet and stress play a role, genetics may also be a contributing factor. Some researchers believe that the salt retention genes that helped African ancestors survive in hot climates might contribute to the higher rates of hypertension seen today. It's also important to note that African American DNA has been instrumental in advancing genetic research. By studying genetic markers in African-descended populations, scientists have identified variations that can help predict disease risk and response to treatments. For example, African American participants in genome-wide association studies have helped uncover genetic factors for conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, and certain cancers. However, there's still a great deal we don't know. African Americans and Africans, in general, are underrepresented in genetic studies. This lack of representation means that many genetic discoveries and medical treatments are based on data from European populations, which may not always be applicable to African Americans. Increasing diversity in genetic research is crucial for ensuring that everyone benefits from medical advancements. In the end, African American DNA isn't just a record of our past. It's a guide for our future, especially when it comes to improving health outcomes for all. The unique genetic diversity of African Americans has become a cornerstone for advancing genetic research. It reflects not only ancestry, but also the ways in which culture, environment, and history have shaped identity over generations. Let's start with the cultural influences brought from Africa. Enslaved Africans didn't just carry their genes. They carried their traditions, languages, and ways of life. These cultural practices often influenced their survival and adaptation in the Americas. For example, dietary habits brought from Africa, such as the use of leafy greens, yams, and okra, have persisted in African American cuisine. Interestingly, some of these foods align with genetic predispositions, such as the tolerance for certain types of starches or fats. Migration within the United States has also played a significant role in shaping African American genetics. The Great Migration, which began in the early 20th century, saw millions of African Americans move from the rural South to urban areas in the North, Midwest, and West. This massive movement brought together people from diverse African and European ancestries, resulting in increased genetic mixing. For example, someone whose ancestors were primarily from West Africa may also carry genetic markers from the Gullah people of the Carolinas or the Creoles of Louisiana. Intermarriage and cultural blending further added to the complexity of African American DNA. In areas like New Orleans, African Americans often intermarried with French, Spanish, and Native American populations, creating unique genetic profiles. Similarly, in northern cities like Chicago and New York, African Americans living in multicultural environments contributed to and benefited from the genetic and cultural exchange. Beyond migration, cultural resilience has also shaped DNA through practices like traditional medicine and spiritual healing. For example, the use of verbal remedies, which originated in Africa, persisted in African American communities and may have influenced genetic adaptations to certain plants or compounds. But culture isn't just about the past. It's also about the future. Today, African Americans are using tools like DNA testing to reconnect with their roots, exploring their genetic ties to specific African regions. These discoveries often inspire a renewed sense of pride and identity, bridging the gap between the past and the present. Ultimately, African American DNA is as much a cultural legacy as it is a genetic one. It reflects not just where people came from, but also how they've survived, adapted, and thrived in the face of change. Representation in genetic research isn't just important, it's essential. Without diverse populations and studies, scientific advancements and medical breakthroughs can end up benefiting only a select few, leaving others behind. When it comes to African Americans, the lack of representation in DNA studies has serious consequences for both science and public health. Here's the issue. Most genetic research has historically focused on populations of European descent. This bias means that many genetic markers and medical treatments are tailored to European populations, often overlooking key variations found in African American DNA. For example, African Americans are more likely to develop certain conditions like sickle cell anemia, hypertension, and kidney disease, but they're often excluded from studies that could help identify genetic risk factors or develop tailored treatments. Why does this happen? Part of the problem is historical mistrust. The unethical treatment of African Americans in studies, like the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, created a legacy of skepticism toward medical research. Many African Americans are understandably cautious about participating in genetic studies, fearing exploitation or misuse of their data. But the cost of this mistrust is high. Without African American representation, researchers miss out on understanding the full spectrum of human genetic diversity. This gap affects everything from disease prevention to drug development. For example, medications like statins, used to treat high cholesterol, may not be as effective in African Americans because they were developed based on European genetic data. To address this, researchers and organizations are working to rebuild trust and increase diversity in studies. Initiatives like the African Ancestry Genome Project and All of Us aim to collect data from underrepresented groups, ensuring that future medical advancements are inclusive. These efforts are critical not just for African Americans, but for global health, as understanding African American DNA can lead to breakthroughs that benefit everyone. Representation isn't just about fairness, it's about progress. When African Americans are included in genetic research, we all gain a deeper understanding of our shared humanity. It's a reminder that diversity isn't just something to celebrate, it's something to study, understand, and learn from.